Hi everyone, it's Ben Davis from Bold Idea, and this video is for mentors, and I'm going to show you how to use Codio, which is the coding environment that our students use to work through their lessons and work on their coding projects. This will be broken out into two sections. I'm going to start by showing you what Codio looks like from the student perspective, and then we'll show you what it looks like from the mentor perspective. It's a little bit different using Codio as a mentor than it is looking as a student. So what students will do is they'll first go to their student portal, which you can see here. Students will log into my.boldidea.org and they'll type in their username and password. And you as a mentor can also see the student's username and password. If they need help logging in, you can just go to your mentor portal and click on the student's name, and then you'll be able to see what their login information is. So I'm just logging in as an example student right now. But this is the first thing students will see when they first log into the student portal for the year. Since we are now doing coding clubs, students are able to choose what they want to work on. So we have a little guidance in here that should help students decide which course they need to select. If students are in the 3rd through 5th grade and it's their first time with Bold Idea, we recommend starting with the creative computing curriculum, which is block-based coding. I'll show a little bit of that in a second. Intro to web development is more appropriate for students in the 5th and up grade level. They'll want to choose this if it's their first time with Bold Idea, or if they've already started a guided project, such as their ice cream shop, their pet shelter or bookstore, and they haven't completed it yet. They can select this course and continue working on that. The creative project for website development is for students that have already finished the intro course. So once they finish the intro course, they can go and they can do what we call a creative project, where it's less structured and they can make their own website about anything they want. They can also do that if they started a creative project in a previous year or semester with Bold Idea, and they want to just keep working on that. And if they completed one creative project and they're ready to do another one, they can, of course, do a second creative project if they want to. There's nothing to stop them from doing as many website projects as they want to do. And JavaScript game development is good if the, students want to try something a little bit more challenging than HTML and CSS. So this is where students will make a space shooter game using JavaScript. And they can select this. Also, if they started a project, let's say during the summer, and they want to finish that project, they can pick up where they left off. And they can also add extra features to their space shooter project if they want. And in the future, we will also have a creative project option for students who have completed the game development course. So for this demo, I'm going to start out by walking you through what it looks like for a student who's doing the intro to web development. So what you'll see is our roadmap. This is what students will see when they log in. This is always going to be on their home page. And the roadmap is just all of the learning activities that they can do. So, of course, they'll do the pre-survey first, and as they check items off, it'll show their progress along here. Now, there's two ways that you can actually get into Codio from the student portal. You can click on this code button here, and that will take you to the Codio homepage. However, what we need students to do is to access Codio through these links that are in the roadmap. Because this is how they actually do the activities that we've created in Codio for the students. And you'll kind of see how that works in a second. So just make sure that students who are taking one of the beginner courses like Intro to Web Development or the JavaScript Game Development intro, that they're using the roadmap and they're accessing the activities through the roadmap. The students who are doing the creative projects, they will likely be just using this code button up here, which will take them into Codio, where they can just create a new project on their own. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this first activity here, behind the curtain. And this will open up Codio in a new tab. And so what you'll notice first is we've got kind of two sections here, two sides to the panels. On the right, we have what's called the guide. And this guide will always be showing. It basically tells the students what they need to do through this activity. So for behind the curtain, we are going to learn how to make our own web page using HTML and CSS. But we're going to kind of take a look and see how websites look behind the curtain, or what's underneath. What does the code look like? So we encourage students to just look around here and click some links on this website. And this is actually a website that was built by a team of our students. This was their creative project that we made. So you can tell students that, someone their own age made this website. So once they kind of explore this and look around and see how it works, they can, maybe have them identify, like, here's what a heading is. Oh, that looks like a heading. I see some images and some paragraphs, links or buttons. Try and have them think about that. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and click this next button to go to the next step. Now you'll see the layout in Codio has changed. We've got some code up here on the upper left, and then we've got the preview down here on the lower right. So the idea behind this activity is students will kind of hack the code. They'll try to explore and change things. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. The first thing that it wants me to do is change the heading where it says "Welcome to our store." And so we'll look through here and see if we can find that. And here it is right here. I'm going to go ahead and change that. And I'm just going to call it "Hello World." So I've changed the code. And one thing that's cool about Codio is you never really have to hit the save button. Codio is always saving every step of the way. Pretty much every keystroke that the student makes is saved by Codio. So all they have to do is come down here and hit the refresh button, and they'll see that the change they made is updated on the preview here. So they'll just kind of keep going through here and experimenting and changing some things. And, we can change a menu item, see how that works, refresh again. And you can see I just changed this menu item here. Another cool thing about this guide is we can, if we mess something up, let's say I kind of accidentally remove this important section here and it completely breaks the site. And we just want to kind of start over. We can just hit this reset button here, and it will restore the files back to the point at the beginning of the lesson. So we hit reset, and then we see the codes come back, and then we'll hit refresh, and we're good to go. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next step in the activity, which is to look at our CSS code and try and change some of that. So the same thing, we can go around here and we'll try and change the background color. I'll change this to pink. And you'll notice that there are some instances where it'll give you a color picker. When you type a color name, let's see if I can bring it up here. And you can click on that and you can select a color and change that to something else. So that's just an extra feature that Codio has to make things a little bit easier. And let's go ahead and see what else we can mess with. I'm going to go ahead and change the text color. I'm going to just change everything to red just to see what happens. We'll hit refresh and we'll see that now our website looks completely different just by changing a couple things here. And the activity also has me changing text align center to text align left. So we can try that out and see how that affects things. So you can see the text is no longer centered here. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much how the experience works for students. They can continue to work through these guides. Another thing that you'll want to help students understand is how to make the most out of their screen real estate. Some students will be on pretty small screens and they might need to get some more space out of it. So you are allowed to change the layout however you want in Codio to make it work best for you. You just kind of have to learn how to do that and how to use the layout. So the first thing we can do to get more space is just collapse the guide here. You'll see when I hit that collapse button that's at the top of the guide, it hides it and it puts this in this little bar right here on the right side of the screen. So to get it back, we can just click on this bar and it'll bring that guide back. Another thing we can do is we can drag tabs to different panels. So let's say I want more space for my preview and more space for my code. What I can do is I can take this tab down here where it says index.html and I can drag it up here. And you'll see that when I'm dragging it, how that top part of the bar changes color. So it kind of highlights it to let you know that you can drop it in there. So I'll go ahead and drop it in there and you'll see now my preview is over here in the same panel that the guide is in. And I can switch back and forth between the guide and the preview by just switching tabs. And of course, if I want space over here, I'm going to have to close this panel and completely get rid of it because there's nothing here. So to do that, there's one way you can do it is you go to View and then Panels and then Close. And that will close that panel. You can also use Control-Alt-C as the keyboard shortcut. And you can see it shows you the keyboard shortcuts right here, what you can use. And that's just a quick way to close it. So I'll go ahead and close that panel and you'll see this one now takes up the full left side so that we can view our code and our preview all in one place. Another thing you'll notice if you're familiar with working with IDEs is there's no file tree. And that's just because that's the way that this guide is currently set up. We only want the student focusing on just the file that they need to be working on for this particular activity. In future activities, we'll introduce them to the file tree and we'll show them how to create new files, how to rename and delete files, things like that. But for now, we're keeping that out of the way just so they can focus on what they need to focus on. Now that we're at the end of this activity, what we can do is we can just close this tab. And you'll know you're at the end when there's no next button. You'll kind of see up here. And you can also click this little button here to get the different pages that are in the activity, and you can switch between them there as well. But once we're at the end, all we have to do is just close the tab. We don't need to save anything. We don't need to submit anything. We'll just close this and go back to the roadmap. So that's what it looks like for web development students. If for some reason students select the wrong course and they want to correct that, they can just click this change course button and we'll get back to this screen. So I'm going to show you real quick what it looks like for JavaScript students. It's going to be just a little bit different. We'll go ahead and take a look at the Intro to JavaScript lesson in Codio. So this guide starts out with just showing the guide in one panel. The students can watch this video and read a little bit about what JavaScript is and how it's run. And in this step, students are introduced to the JavaScript console. This is where they're actually typing JavaScript code. And so what we do in this activity is we open up the console for them on the left side of the screen here. And all they need to do to start using console is to click inside here and just start typing. So I can do 4 plus 2, and I'll get 6. I can do let age equals 12, and then see what age plus 20 comes out to. And that's 32. And so once they work through this, this activity, they'll be introduced to how to run JavaScript from a file. So we talk about how to actually put a script tag in HTML and save their JavaScript code into a file. And you'll notice here we've got the file tree open, but in this activity, we're just going to add some code to the HTML. We're going to type our H1 heading, call it JavaScript practice. And then we're going to hit the refresh button just to make sure that worked. And now you'll notice down here below the preview, we've got the JavaScript console as well. So for JavaScript students, this console will show anytime they open the preview, but that's how they access the console, is just through this preview window. And so we can, once we put some script code in here, we can kind of see how that works. So I'm going to go ahead and add the script, and I'm going to say console.log hello world. And then to run this, it's really just about refreshing the preview. So when you refresh the page, it'll reload it, and we should get the JavaScript console printing out hello world. So we can resize this by just dragging this up and down, but the console is always going to be paired with the preview. You unfortunately can't separate the console out into its own panel. But if we want to get more space, again, just like with the websites, we can drag this over here, and we'll have more space for the preview and the console. And of course, we can close this panel there and get more space for our code. But as we're going through the guide, you'll notice that it will reset the layout for you. So if we go back and then go forward to that same activity, you'll see that it's reset the layout. So that's just kind of the way it works. Another thing to note is if we close the guide accidentally, actually, I don't think it will let you do that. But if for some reason you can't find the guide anymore, you can always go to the tools and then guide and then play, and that will bring the guide back. So that's what it looks like for JavaScript. Another thing I want to show you guys is kind of how the code challenges will work. And so at some point during the lesson, students will be asked to solve a code challenge. So the first coding challenge in JavaScript is going to be on the expressions and variables section. And I'm going to go ahead and just jump forward to that. So as we go through and learn about expressions and all this kind of stuff, we get to the turtle squares challenge. So on this page, we actually have a button that we've created that will open the preview for them. So once they kind of take a stab at how they think the code needs to change, they can open the preview. They could do this the first thing as well, just to see what happens. But you'll notice that part of this script has an alert. And I don't know if you can actually see the alert on my screen right now, but if you're screen sharing with students virtually, if you're using Zoom, you might not see that alert pop up. And so that's something that you'll just need to keep in mind. And you'll see this as you go through the activities on your own, how the alert box works. But just keep in mind that if you're doing virtual, there might be cases where the student can see the alert box, but you can't see it. So I'm going to go ahead and just type in the number 10. It's asking me for a size. And you'll see that the challenge here is obviously not doing what it's supposed to. We need the turtle to make a square. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to say, I already know the answer to this. We just need to use a variable, since that's something we learned about. And we're going to use that size variable here, where the turtle goes forward in a certain number of steps. And I can see there's also another bug where when you change the angle to 90 degrees, I'll go ahead and fix that. And you'll notice that as I'm changing the code here, it's not updating this. So when we want to see the effects of our code, we need to go and click the refresh So I'll enter the size of 20 this time. And you'll see I've created a square that's 20 pixels wide. And I can keep trying and I can make squares that are different sizes. There's a 100 pixel square. So that's pretty much how the code challenges work for students. The purpose of code challenges is actually very important. We will be using these challenges to as assessments for students earning badges. So that's essentially how they earn badges, is they'll do these challenges, and if they're able to solve the puzzle, then they get one step closer to earning their JavaScript badge. And we'll have more information on how badges work. You can actually find that in the resources section in your mentor dashboard. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is look at what Codio looks like for students who are using Scratch, because it will be just a little bit different. So here's what a roadmap looks like for a Scratch student. We've got the first few lessons filled out. We'll have the rest of the lessons in there soon. But I'm going to go ahead and just get started by clicking on Welcome. And you'll see we've got the guide over here. We've got something that kind of shows students, here's how you use the guide. And just tells them how to use the back and forward buttons. So we'll go ahead and click Next. And the first thing students are going to do is they're going to be introduced to the idea of the reflection journal. And this reflection journal is essentially after every single activity they do in creative computing. We want them to fill this out just to kind of get them thinking more about what they're learning, get them thinking more about code. So this first question is pretty simple. It's just, what are the different ways you interact with computers, and how many of those ways involve being creative? So that might be, playing video games or using a drawing app on their phone. So they can, let's say playing video games. I'll go ahead and type that in, and we just hit Submit Answer when we're done. And sometimes this little pop-up will come up where it says you're only able to make one attempt. They can just click yes here and not really worry about that. But once they've filled out their reflection, they can move on to the next step. This section, it kind of teaches the students how to use Codio and how to give themselves some more space. So it's very likely that students will be on a smaller screen. So they might need to grab the middle part of this bar here and stretch that out to give them more space for Scratch. Or of course they can click the collapse button and collapse it all together. So that just shows them how to do that. So once students get familiar with the Codio interface, we can close out of this assignment and go to the next activity, which is the Scratch Surprise. And I'll check mark that box to note that I'm done with that one. And Scratch Surprise is really just their opportunity to explore the interface, move some blocks around, and just see what happens. The goal is just to get the cat to do something, whatever that is. So they can move blocks out here and make the cat move a certain number of steps and see what happens. They can click on here and watch the cat move. They can explore these different buttons over here just to see what happens. So if I click this block again, you'll see it'll make the cat say hello. And of course, when we're done with this activity, we click Next and we do our reflections. So again, after each activity, we're doing our reflections. So under, here, this is really just, what did you figure out? What did you try? What do you want to know more about? And I'll show you in a bit as a mentor how you can go through here and see what students are writing for their reflections. So that's essentially what Scratch looks like. The activities start out extremely simple, and they build in complexity slowly over time. So for example, with this 10 blocks activity, the challenge is to get students to use 10 blocks. They can use any of the blocks any number of times, but they're to experiment with this and see what they can make with just these 10 blocks. And that's basically Scratch. That's what it looks like. For students who are doing a creative project for, let's say, the website development project, the guide is much looser. It's really just about ideation and planning, brainstorming, getting your wireframe done. And most of these are all links that are outside of Codio. But once they're ready to start coding, we just go up here and click on the code button, and it should redirect them to the Codio homepage. And it takes just a second to get that process going. But now here we are at the Codio homepage for students. So this is what students see when they go to Codio. And they'll see any courses that they've actually taken part in here. And again, in order to participate in these courses, they have to click that link from the roadmap, and that will make those courses show up in Codio. To actually do their own projects, they click here on this My Projects link. And we can go up here to New Project. And it's pretty simple. We just select what our starting point is. The options that you see here might change. We'll probably make this a more limited set of options that just applies to our curriculum. But I'm going to select empty stack right now, since that's pretty much the most basic kind of starting point. And I'll just call this My Test Project down here in the details. And the description is optional. You don't have to put anything there. And then we just hit Create, and it will create that new project in Codio. Now it'll start out by showing just a basic README file, and they'll have just a limited kind of interface here. But this is where we'll want to start learning how to use the different layouts in Codio. So I'm going to go ahead and close that file, and I'm going to go to View, and then Layouts. And we can go to the default layout, which is what we started with, or I can go to the 2-column layout. So switching layouts will switch tabs, but that basically gives you the different panels that you can use. So now I can go ahead and create a new file. I'll start making my home page. I'm not going to bother with proper HTML format here, so we'll just a tag so we can see how it works. And to preview, what we have to do is hit this preview button up here at the top, and that will preview our page. Now you'll notice when I hit preview, it opened it in this tab right here, and that's because I had this pane selected. If I want the preview to open over here, I have to actually select this panel. So I can do two things. I can drag this tab over here, and that'll put my preview to the right, or I can select this panel before hitting preview, and it will open that in the selected panel. And then from then on, anytime I make any changes, all I have to do is make code changes, and then I can refresh that preview and see what happens. So that's pretty much how you can use Codio layouts. You can customize it even more. Let's say I want two files open here. I can go to View, Panels, Panels and Split Horizontal. And that gives me another one that I can use down here. So let's say I want to have my HTML file up here and my CSS file down here. I can easily do that with these panels. So if I go select that panel and I hit New File, type in style.css, I can start typing my CSS file. Oh, and of course this won't work because I need to include it up here, but you get the idea. This is essentially how students can start using Codio for creative projects and getting used to how this layout works. So that's pretty much what Codio looks like from the student's perspective. The next thing I want to show you guys is what Codio looks like from a mentor's perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of here, and I'm going to log out of the student portal, and I'm going to go to mentor.boldidea.org, and I'll log in to my mentor account. We are example mentor. And what you'll see is whatever club you're currently assigned to, you'll see that pop up here. And we just click into there, and you'll see the student roster over here on the right and your list of mentors over here on the left. So to access Codio, it's the same way that students do, but you're going to want to go ahead and click on resources. And if you don't have a course currently selected, it will ask you to select a course. So I want to look at the resources for Intro to Web Development. And this is how I get to the roadmap. So for students, they see the roadmap on their home page for whatever course they're selected. For you, you'll see the roadmap in your resources panel. So I'll click on Course Roadmap, and now I can see the roadmap for Intro to Web Development. So this is your own roadmap. This is a great way to kind of practice the activities on your own and keep track of where you are in practicing those activities. Let's go ahead and click on the first behind the curtain activity that we saw earlier and see what that looks like from the mentor's side. So this will open up Codio in a new tab. And you'll see that we aren't brought into the activity right away. What you'll see as a mentor is a different interface. We have here a list of the students that are enrolled in that course. So you won't see students in this list until they select the first activity that appears in that course. Or if they've done this activity, they'll show up in that list. So what we can do is we can click over here and actually open this student's project. So you'll see that student A has spent 11 minutes on that project. And that's essentially what we did in that very first step just a little while ago. So I'll click on Open Project, and this will open up the student's project in a new tab. So you can see we're actually looking at the last place that the student left off as they did this activity. It starts on the third page of the guide at the very end where they do their CSS. And you can see that I'm looking at exactly what the student did on their page where they turned it pink and they changed the text color. And I can see that this student actually did do this activity according to what the guide said. So one thing that's really nice about this is you can use this to make sure that your students are actually engaging with the curriculum. Sometimes it can be difficult to know whether or not the students are actually doing any coding, especially in a virtual environment. So this is very useful for that because we can see what they've done. I can go through the different activities in the guide. Of course, it will switch the layout. So I can see what we did here in the HTML file. I can see that they changed the H2, or I guess we reset that earlier. So we don't see the change that they made here, but I can go to the CSS one and see that we changed the color to pink and red. Another really great feature of Codio is the code playback feature. So like I said, everything that student does in their code is automatically saved. Almost every keystroke that they make is saved. So to do code playback, we just go to Tools and then Code Playback. Now we get this little interface in a new tab here, and I can see this is how the code started out. And if I click this little advanced button here, we can see the next change that they made. So I can see that the student changed this color to pink, and maybe they changed it to something else. So we kind of changed it again. And then we went down here and we changed this color to red. You can also hit the play button and it'll play the code really fast. You can also change the speed at which it plays. If you want it to play really slow, you can do that. And we'll just see one change every second. And we'll see exactly what that student did. This is also really useful if you want to restore code to a certain point and get that code back into here. So let's say a student accidentally deleted all their code and they want to get it back. We can go to the code playback and get to, let's say, one step ago. And I can just copy all of this. And I can go back in here and I can paste it in. And you'll see that we are back to where we started. The only gotcha right here is that if we try and copy and paste from here where it shows this little what's deleted and what's added, we might need to go in there and fix that. But that's pretty easy to do. We just have to be aware of changing that one thing. So that's what Codio looks like from a mentor's perspective when looking at a student project. Another thing is if a student is actually in here coding at the same time while you're looking at this, you can see where the student's cursor is, and they can also see where your cursor is. So it's a really great way to interact with students and interact them while they're coding. And you can kind of talk to them about what they're doing, and you can say, go to line 8 and check out this here, and I can highlight this, and the student will actually be able to see what I'm highlighting. Another thing you can do is you can go through and add code comments. So on the left side, when I hover over here, you see this little plus button. So I can say, let's say I want to add a comment on this line. And I can say, try using text align left. So I'll create that comment. And now when the student goes in and looks at their code, they'll see this comment here. And they know that they can go in here and change their code. So we can just hit the check mark to get that resolved and go away. So again, this is just a really great way to interact with your students and see how they're doing on their code. Now, when it comes to code challenges, like I mentioned in JavaScript, this is how you'll be looking at their code challenge. You'll open their project and you'll go to the whatever step in the guide has that code challenge, and you'll run it and you'll just see if it does what it's supposed to do. And that's pretty much all there is to it when it comes to looking at students' work in Codio and kind of keeping tabs on them and making sure they're staying engaged through this learning process. Okay, so the last thing you're probably wondering is how can I get in there and practice these activities on my own and work my way through the curriculum? That's really easy to do. When you click on the activity and you're brought over to Codio, you'll see this screen here for students first. But to get to your own area where you can practice your own activity in your own space, just click the back button here. You see where it says assignments up here. We can click back and we'll get to the main page for this course. And what you can do is you can look at all the different activities. There will be a lot more activities down here once we get that filled out. But all you have to do is just go over here and click on the preview button, this little eyeball looking thing. And it will open that activity for you in your own tab, in your own space. This is your own box where you can do whatever you want, and it won't affect anything else that anyone's working on. So I definitely encourage you to do that. Try and get familiar with the activities, at least the first few activities, so that you know what the students are going to be working on. You know what challenges they'll be dealing with. You'll know what discussions to have with them as they're learning to code through this curriculum. But that's pretty much it. That's everything I wanted to show you. And again, you can find more information in your resources section. We'll have lots of different guides available to show you how to do specific things in Codio. But thanks a lot.